Welcome. Thank you, Srinath, for that introduction. So it's on our last day. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm here to talk about compliance, which is probably not the most interesting topic for most, but something that we at WSO2 has had to take pretty seriously and figure out how we bring this into our day-to-day delivery in our products and services. So in front and center of all of this is innovation, and that's something that's very important to us as a company. So how do we bridge both of these ideologies and thoughts together as we move forward and grow this business and reach greater and bigger markets? I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was just that. So the idea of innovation and software development, right? So when we think about, there are a couple of things that come to mind. When you think about software development, it brings together fundamentals, principles, practices, technologies, best practices. All of this make up what we call a software system. And in order to take that to where WSO2 has taken our products and services, what we have done is to incubate innovation into each part of that life cycle. We're not just a leader in our space. We got there because we took innovation pretty seriously, and it's a very critical part of our culture. I think you've heard Sanjeeva speak to that prior to this in other talks as well. The stepping stone to all of what we do is innovation, and I think that's something that we try to drive through in everything that we do. And like I said, it's built in from the very start all the way through till the very end. It drives our growth. It brings us customers. It brings us revenue, and it makes us think beyond what we've done in the past. If you think about it, that is WSO2's story. You've seen our industry recognitions. I've put a couple up there. But the piece that a lot of people have not seen thus far is the security page underneath WSO2.com. If you get a chance, go there. You're going to see a lot of how we do, why we do what we do, and when we decide to do those things that are related to security and compliance, which are very closely connected together. So how do we achieve this? When you think about this, there are a lot of different aspects to consider. End of the day, for us at WSO2, it really is, it's about the balance. How do we achieve that balance between what we do in terms of our people, process, technology, our products, our services, our forward thinking in terms of where we want to go next, the different markets that we want to reach. For all of this, we need to bring together a couple of different areas. The first thing is we've had to change that perception that security and compliance is going to slow things down. It's going to slow our innovation. That's traditional thinking, and I think there's been certain areas where it's been true, and we worked a lot to make that idea of a conflict into more of a complementary aspect of how we do things at WSO2. So it actually enables us to scale and deliver our products and services much faster, much more securely, and in a way that the issues and problems and challenges that used to come along the way have reduced over time. So things are moving faster and more efficiently. We have to encourage the adoption of new technology, AI, for example, and we have to do that without fear and with a lot of confidence. But how do you do that, right? We have our brightest and best that are going out there. They're trying to build these amazing products. How do we enable that? That's up to the security and compliance teams to work on. That's where we do a lot of the prep work, we do a lot of the forward thinking, we do a lot of the research, and we do a lot of assistance in terms of, hey, here's plan A, B, and C that the engineering teams, that our devs can then leverage in their daily activities that they have to do in order to deliver. That's all good, but then you also have to think about, why are we doing this, right? We really want to hold a strong position in the market. For that to happen, you have to sustain our effectiveness within our product lines. Our customers need to be confident with what we deliver. It needs to be sustained. Resiliency is a new concept that you're seeing with a lot of these new regulations. How fast you fail and how fast you get up. How can you withstand the pressures of whether it be these bad actors trying to get into our systems and our environments and our products to disrupt availability, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think I talked about maintaining confidence. And then all of this comes together for us to be able to reach out to greater markets, different parts of the world that we need to get to. And for all of that to happen, our foundational aspects of compliance and risk management have to be pretty good and sound. But then you have to manage that. You get to that point, and then you have to manage that. Managing that balance becomes tricky because you actually have to work with different parts of the organization in sync. There were times in the past in other parts, other companies that I worked at as well, where this security and compliance become this one silo nobody really wants to work with unless they have to. What we are trying to do is, security and compliance is trying to reach out to all these other organizations and bring them in to work together as we need to deliver. And that's a very different shift. It's been working pretty well. Anybody that has, I wouldn't say it's easy. When you talk about working with product teams, working with legal, finance, our own security layers, the procurement, all of these things need to come together when you're not just starting an effort, but you're sustaining it over time. That's a science, and that can only happen over time if, at least for us, the security and compliance team took that first step to reach out instead of waiting to be reached out to. I think that was a change, and ultimately, all roads in compliance lead to risk. So what is the risk? What is the risk to the company? What is the risk to the customer? You have to really understand that, and if you can understand that, I think that's where you achieve that balance. You have to be able to have some kind of mechanism to identify those risks, some way to quantify those risks, so essentially putting numbers, some way to qualify those risks, so evaluate, analyze what does it really mean, and then make true business decisions based on that. Because end of the day, WSO2 and our customers, we have to come together on those levels of risk. If you can map those out and then work your way back, the whole life cycle of compliance and risk will flow through with a lot less friction. So, what does compliance mean to WSO2? I was thinking about this, and there are a couple of fundamental principles. There is the strategic approach to applicability. So, back in the day, there's a compliance requirement, compliance ask, we have to all go to and make this happen. Now it's more of, yes, we have a requirement, yes, we have an ask, but let's just take a step back and think about applicability, the when and the how. Life cycle management, of course, which is the complete life cycle of the start of a requirement to how do we pull it into engineering and development, how do we then move that over to across to other products, and then scale up without making it seamless as you go from one product to another, one requirement to another requirement. Compliance will always be an opportunity, and I think that's one of the things that we have to, and I'll talk more about that. That's, again, a mind shift, because traditionally it's not perceived to be one, but that's where we need to go. It really does improve the efficiencies in what we do and the product itself. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Collaboration, new ideas, creativity, that has to be a core component in how we handle this. So this is a little bit busy, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to pull together this map of what compliance looks like for us. So we have the regulatory certification attestation world. Right now, you see the different compliance standards and requirements that we meet, and the ones in purple we are in progress. These are customers' demand, they ask for. We actually have third parties come in. We do these annually. These are certifications that we get. This, at different levels, provide confidence to our customers that we are protecting the data that we get from them, and the products that they use from us are also secure and can safeguard them. The other piece to this is we also have things that are regional, deployment specific, customer specific. These get tricky, and I've listed a couple of these here. There's more. I ran out of space. These can come from any part of the world. It really depends on the customer as well. You can have a customer that's based in the US who's actually, a customer whose products and services are consumed in the US, but their manufacturing can be in the EU. So how these requirements apply to them really vary. And that's where you have to be strategic and thoughtful about helping your customers understand what they need. Because more often than not, they just think they need everything. If you go over to the coverage and scope, so WSO2 has our SaaS products, but we're also open source, on-prem deployments as well. So how compliance applies, how security applies to those different environments are different. And a big part of what we do is to help our customers understand what they need, depending on what ask they have. We want to be able to market our products everywhere. And next slide, I'll show you a map. We don't want to be restricted by, we can only do business in the EU, we can only do business in the US, but we can't do business in the Philippines. That's not a good model. We should be able to be flexible and provide what our customers need very quickly. Cross-functional engineering and security support, that's just the core of what we do. I think Sanjeeva talked a lot about how our teams are small. We work very well together. There's not many hierarchies in between. That's how we get these things done accurately and fast. So when we have compliance things that we need to worry about, it's a big combination of, hey, we need finance to help us, we need legal to help us, we need engineering to help us, the security folks, and it's, again, start to finish. GRC is a term that, if you're from the compliance world, that's something that you're familiar with. We didn't always have that in a very structured fashion, and I'll get to some of that structure later. But that's important: governance, risk, and compliance. So those are three components that are very closely tied together. It needs to be flexible. It cannot be rigid. That then prevents that pace, scale of delivery. We move very fast. We should be able to pivot. We should be able to adjust. We should not be following in just the same 10-step process every single time. Again, the balance that I talked about. And the other thing that we do here, which I haven't really seen in other organizations as much, is compliance decision making is somewhat of a decentralized approach. So there is not one person who's making all the compliance decisions. We empower our teams, we educate them, we train them on the themes, the high level understanding, what's important to us, what things they need to understand. And they can make the decisions. And then they are accountable for those decisions. And it's worked really well. It's nice to be probably the first time I get reached out constantly, can you come and help us now? It took about 6 months, but that's where we are at now. And I think that's that collaboration coming together. But it also makes things move fast. You're not waiting for things anymore. Compliance violations come in terms of financial or it can be contractual. So these are pretty significant things. We have to take these requirements pretty seriously. I think the regional aspect has been the biggest challenge for us. Okay, so I tried to create this map. I ran out of space. It's too small to put all 90 plus countries, but you see the spread. We have all the regions here. We have representation across them all, and we have all these different countries. When it comes to those certification type compliance asks, those are easy. Those apply across. When it comes to the regional, country specific, that gets pretty tricky. As you can see, how do you satisfy all of these? And we've done our best to get to a point where I think the trick here is using this very consistent processes and trying to get to a point where by meeting one requirement, you meet many. And that's the only way we've managed to achieve this across our customer base. Okay. So I talked earlier about, hey, it's an opportunity and not a blocker. So with all these different regulations and all these different countries, we've had to get pretty creative on how we do this and how we deal with the multitude of different regions and countries that we have to work with. We have to stop thinking that this is just a check the box activity. And it's the traditional, or we are meeting a compliance standard or a requirement. We have to think about it a little bit differently in order to scale up in that manner. Regular testing, that's an area where we've continued to improve on, and I'll give some examples of where that might be the case. And of course, automation. Simple things like automating our metrics, automating our reporting, automating the collection of data, automating the collection of evidence, automating the meeting of a requirement, which takes some resource times, tooling, etc. When I think of some good examples of what I can share, DORA compliance. Now, this was something that came up in the EU and something that we had to work with. We didn't have a choice. Pretty strict regulation. There's a lot of very clear guidelines and requirements, and it came upon us pretty quickly. Now, the traditional way of thinking, the check-in-the-box way of thinking is, okay, I got to take all these 10 requirements and I have to meet them all. We took a different approach. We said, okay, let's look at our customer base. It's this segment. What kind of deployments do they have? Oh, they're not on any of our cloud deployments because they're all in banking, and these are financial customers. They're all on-prem deployments. So you just bring it down and dumb it down to a point where what requirements really apply. And the requirements that really apply to these customers, we already met. It was just a matter of representation. And today we can say we are DORA compliant for all our EU customers that we currently have. And I think that's that traditional thinking versus strategic thinking. Common controls, anyone who's done this before remembers the old days of the cloud common controls matrix. It was an attempt, it was a great idea, a great thought. It was an attempt to, hey, how do we create this one-size-fits-all structure for all companies, for all compliance requirements? It was a great idea. Where it failed was it wasn't customizable, because you had to take that set of requirements and try to fit a square peg in a round hole. So it wasn't always usable. So what we're doing now is, say you have an existing compliance requirement, SOC 2, for example, that our customers need, and we have a new ask now, which is HIPAA compliance for some of our customers that are looking to onboard with the healthcare data. What we do now is map those requirements against, say, SOC 2 requirements. You have a subset that seem very closely matched. Do we need to up one so that we meet both requirements with the one activity? So that we are kind of creating our own cloud controls matrix that used to exist years ago, to come up with the least amount of outliers that we have to do with every new compliance requirement or standard that comes our way. Work in progress, but that's starting to look like it's a much better approach. We have to allow our engineers to test and have a place for them to build without feeling the pressures of compliance. And that's an architecture design conversation, making sure that we are providing that ability for all the engineers to do that. Back in the day, you could do test and dev and not worry about touching production, and the world is different today. It's agile. We are doing a lot of work in production. So how do we ensure and put the guardrails that they need to keep doing what they have to do? And like I said, absolutely encourage new technology. Does it really improve the efficiency in our product deployment? Achieving compliance by design is something that we hear a lot of people talk about. But why? Why is that important? Because when you think about compliance, all compliance requirements are based on best practice security design requirements or architectural requirements. So by default, you are probably going to meet most of those good things by aligning against your existing compliance requirements. We even sometimes create best practice documents based on compliance guidelines we don't have to follow because it just brings in good practice. It just reduces the burden later. Because if you think about it, things like access control, change management, segregation of duties, vulnerability management, you talk about any compliance standard or requirement, those things are all there. Those are foundational aspects, and that list is longer than that. So pulling those things in at the very start helps you later. Does it really streamline what we do? We've started to see that, because operationally, in the past, we have new customers who come in, they're on board and say, hey, we like this requirement, we like this standard, we like this certification. And then we need to start figuring out what that means, and then it's a ground up effort. It takes several weeks, then we have to wait till the next audit cycle. You need 3 months of evidence to collect before anybody can come and certify you. So the list is long for why it takes a long time for a customer to onboard and say they're certified. Now, what we do is we've streamlined that process in terms of what onboarding means, in terms of what evidence collection generation means, in terms of what the audit teams need to understand about the design architecture elements. So now it's much faster whenever we have a conversation about, hey, we have a new customer who is inquiring about XYZ. Before they get to contract state, we can already tell our sales teams, okay, if they want this certification, this is how long it's going to take. Let's pull that into consideration when we're talking to them. And that gives them, the customers, more confidence too, because we are quite definite in what we are saying in terms of timelines and expectations. Some examples of how this does improve our process along the way. Internal audit functions is we don't have actually an internal audit team, but we have created the function based on more current, I think, continuous monitoring capabilities that we have, both tooling and process-wise. We've started to come up with this process where you don't have to feel like you're getting audited, because that means it's time taken away from you, doing great things. But as you step through your day-to-day activities on delivering something, you automatically get the checks and balances are already happening. Cloud platforms, I think that's where I talked about streamlining the process, right? So we are very clear on what does it mean for somebody to onboard to a new instance, to a new platform, and then what does it mean if they want, they're already on Asgardio, now they want to get, on board to Choreo, what can I have? Well, that's already outlined, and it's very easy for them to understand how long it takes, what it means, from a cost perspective, and effort perspective. And of course, CI/CD pipe and code gets automatically scanned all the time as it moves through. So that's just reduced, increased the effectiveness of our code over time. We rarely have any concerns in that space anymore. Encourages collaboration. So this is a big part of what we do at WSO2, and also something to think about in terms of open source capabilities and how we build our products and come together to get the best product out there. We really have to depend on our partners out there to help us with our development processes and also our internal teams. I think I talked a lot about this. We have our annual hackathons that we bring a lot of great minds together to help us with improving our products. And then, like I said, there's so many inquiries, data protection acts, policies, contract terms, the reviews that we all do. We don't depend on one team to do it. All our teams come together to do it, and they're all doing some of this on our day-to-day. So it's a matter of how do you put a governance structure around it. GRC, so very quickly, this is what that life cycle should look like. You have your people, technology, process. You have your governance arm. Like I said, it has to be flexible and meet our business goals. You have that flows into compliance. You must make that data-driven. That's what we're really trying to do now, so that it alleviates a lot of the pain points. And then that flows into risk. So what is risk? Likelihood versus impact. There's a lot of different ways of thinking about what likelihood means to an organization and what impact means to the organization. It's very specific, unique to your business needs. Not going to go through a lot of this, but this is just information on what each of those things mean. We have, governance is, your usual rules, policies, oversight mechanisms, roadmaps, et cetera. To me, although we say GRC, to me it's GCR. That's the natural flow of things, because the governance arm then flows into how do you run compliance. Mostly what we do is it's data-driven, like I said before. Very easy to manage quick changes. We can leverage things from before, repeat, rinse, repeat again, and automation. That flows into risk management. That's the core of everything, I think. That's the X factor. Very specific to your organization and your customer base. Once you figure that out, that's what flows back to to your governance structure. That's you should drive your governance through what comes out of your risk management space. So with that, I wanted to leave some quotes that I thought were important to this kind of space, or topic rather. I think the first one is the US Deputy AG's quote: "If you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance." So this is something that we used to, a way that we used to nudge in my past life when I was working for the DoD. And this is not financial, by the way. For government entities, it's more than that. It's about the data that you're talking about. So what it means for DoD data to be compromised. That changes that thought process very quickly. Another one, good compliance is good business. That's how you gain trust and inventory of innovation. So that's from IBM. I think that applies to how we think of compliance at WSO2. General Motors, they changed how they do things. And innovation is regulated in regulated industries isn't about breaking the rules. So it's not something bad. It's about rethinking what's possible within those swim lanes. And that's where that thinking, the change that needs to happen on how you think of security and compliance. My favorite, of course, is Brad Smith, and you hear this through and through if you've heard him speak. He's the president of Microsoft, and the most innovative companies are not the ones that ignore regulations, but those that design them, that design with them in mind from the very start. So pulling them into those first steps of how you build a product. And this, by the way, he was general counsel for Microsoft, so that's a lawyer speaking. So that's, I think, really speaks to not being afraid to innovate and still being able to meet those requirements. Personally, for me, compliance really should be fun. And I think if you can overcome the fears of going there and doing what you have to do and not being worried about what compliance or security might have to say about it, that's what you need to overcome, and the rest becomes a journey. Thank you very much. Is there any questions?